Okay, so what has your spirit? What led you to this place where you're, very free with your spirituality? And I would also want to say that I don't mean to offend anyone who does use the vehicle of formal religion to practice their spirituality, because it certainly has its purpose and its role. But anyway, I just wanted to put that disclaimer out. But what led you here? How did you get to this place?
For me, it's interesting because the very thing that I said, what I don't believe God is what led me to where I am now.
Mm-hmm.
The judgment from family and friends, because we were basically, you know how you follow the leader, you grow up, say Baptist, and
Yeah.
then you feel like that's the way to go. So then you raise your kids Baptist and so forth. I basically broke that chain. And my ex husband was Church of God in Christ, so that was really strict religious setting, and it started with his family, with the
Mm-hmm.
judgment and the condemnation. And so it's funny because when you're a baby in Christ, God kind of holds your hand and just keeps you really close. And then as you grow in Him, you spread out. But when I was a baby, He started speaking to me very early, and I heard clear as day, this is not how I intended for you to serve me. And so I
Yeah.
just could not keep ignoring what was laid on my spirit.
Yeah.
And I just didn't feel right. So I started to question.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I started to question, a lot of people did not like that. So that
Sorry
led
for
me
that.
to my own search. And then, as I started seeing people continue to condemn and judge and not be loving, like you said, how can God be loving and then still condemn you? I started asking those exact same questions. And I don't know why we don't ask that more. You know what? Because it doesn't make sense. How can we serve this loving, all forgiving God, but then you tell us if we don't do certain things, we're going to hell and we're going to be cast into eternal flames of
Mm-hmm.
fire. It doesn't add up. So I started asking questions early, and
Yeah.
then I followed my spirit. I paid attention to how I felt.
It's uncomfortable to ask those questions. It can be uncomfortable for you yourself, depending upon how you grew up in the religion,
Hmm.
and those rules that are put into place in terms of those boundaries of what you can ask and how far you can go with those questions. And
Hmm.
then once you start posing those questions, the it makes other people uncomfortable, because you're not only like you might be, braving that storm and like taking that leap to ask the questions, but by asking them, it forces others to entertain them, and
Hmm.
that makes it very uncomfortable. I experienced that myself, so yeah, that
Hmm.
can make it very uncomfortable. But that's why we can't ask, because when you start asking the questions, um, at least for me, when I was asking the questions in the formal setting, the response I got every time was, you just have to have faith.
Mm.
Yeah.
You just have
And
to believe it, and like, okay, I mean, I have faith,
I think that
and,
you also have to feel it. I
but
think that you can believe it, but you also have to feel it. You
hmm
can't ignore your feelings because that's where God is, your intuition, your inner
hmm
compass. That is
yeah,
God.
yeah. And to that
Yeah.
point too, like when, like if you're, this would always interest me. Like I would be in church and I would be thinking, I would know like what I needed to do in certain circumstances. Like I would just know, and someone would come and say, the Lord told me to come and tell you. And I appreciate that, you know, but he was telling me something different. Like I talked to him too. He told me something a little different than that, but I appreciate it. But a lot of times, like the message would be to further lead to conformity. You know what I mean? Like God told me to tell
Yeah.
you that you needed to basically, if I just finish the sentence, that you
Hmm.
need to conform, so,
Yeah.
but anyway, that's just my experience with that. But so what would you say, Nalo?
That sounds pretty familiar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well,
For me, my story is a little bit funny because not only we were brought up in the church and we were going to church, but I was married to the church.
Okay.
So, my first husband was a minister.
Okay.
Um,
Wow.
he wasn't a minister when we got married. He went to school and he was like, well, I'm going to go to school to be a minister. And then everything changed. A lot of stuff changed once he started going to school. And then I started serving, I guess, in the church in different organizations and things like that.
Yeah.
And that's when it really started to get a little uncomfortable and a lot more suffocating because it was every day, it was all multiple times a day, it was money, it was a lot of it was a lot. Like, how much time we got? And I can remember it was around, I was 28. And I just started saying, well, I don't want to go this week. And I just started feeling really uncomfortable and annoyed and not liking the things I saw behind the scenes. And I just was getting annoyed with everything. And so that, of course, caused riffraff in the marriage. And we were battling and, you know, all of this stuff. And once I got out of the marriage, which wasn't really that long, I just started saying to myself, I just want to see truth. I want to hear truth. I want to experience truth in everything and everybody. And things just started showing up for me. And so I just kept down that road.
Funny how that happens. Yeah, when you ask for it and you start, the truth starts to present itself.
Yeah.
It almost like when you open that door, it kind of fast track you. Because you're like, you know, like all of these just different resources, people, you know, start to present themselves, people that were in your life, even that you didn't even realize were on that page. You're like, oh, that's what you think? I didn't know that, you know? And so, yeah, that's really interesting. When you ask for the truth, it certainly presents itself for sure.
Yeah. When you start to act, then you really start to see how powerful you really are and the things that you're speaking are. You say you want it, but then you got to be prepared for when it comes. And so you have to be open in your mind and your heart, because it's going to be completely different from what you've been raised on your entire life. Like I said, I was 28. That's, you know, that's a long time before 28 when you've been taught and trained and kind of, like you say, conformed and molded into a certain thing. And then all of a sudden you're like, you know, something's not feeling right. I just want the truth. I want to experience truth. And then things start showing up. And you're just like.
Yeah, for sure. What would you say, Kisha?
I wanted to touch on one thing you said about the condemnation, feeling condemned. Everyone's talking about feeling condemned and the condemnation. I kind of believe that a lot of the religions were structured almost like a dictatorship, you know, to keep people in line, you know, to scare slaves and, you know, just and I would go to church and, you know, growing up Baptist is a lot of Holy Ghost and crying and boo-hooing and just, it's so dramatic in itself. And it's beautiful when you're hurt, because I always call the pulpit the emergency room for the emotionally ill. And that's where we all go. That's the gateway. It's the door to get to the other side. And I would keep going to the same door. And as I matured in my spirituality, I was like, I don't feel like this anymore. I'm not hurt. I don't have anything to cry about. So what's next? What do we do now? Like every week I'm gonna be boohooing and crying about and complaining. And, you know, it was just like what do you call it? Like
a wailing wall?
Yeah.
Like a rerun.
Exactly. And I would walk in the doors and I got to the point where I felt so powerful. Like, I want to know where to go from here. What's next? I've heard this sermon how many times? I don't have anything else left to cry about. So I just kind of felt like there was more after that. You know, what actually brought me, well, we grew up in church. You know, our cousins sang in the choir, our grandmother preached, and aunts and uncles. You know, that was just our lifestyle.
Yeah.
I believe through slavery, of course, most definitely. And then I was in this really bad marriage, and I just used to go to church just for some salvation. Like it was, I felt like I was married to a devil, like a Lucifer's brother or like BFF or something. So that really drove me to, I was looking for an escape, you know,
Hmm.
to be saved from this horrific lifestyle I had gotten myself
Yeah.
into. But then after I started growing and, you know, kept going and growing and going and growing and growing. And I was like, I just don't, I felt like I was healed on that level.
Hmm.
And I just felt like this isn't for me anymore. There has to be more. And then that's when it was Bible study one Wednesday, I'll never forget. And I walked in and I was just like, I'm not feeling this. And then I left and I started searching for more. And when you search for more, you definitely get more. And that's when I started running into more mystical type people. Just walking in the street and a girl would grab my hand and just read my palm out of the blue. And that started opening my eyes even more. I was having more of those experiences.
Yeah.
I was asking for more. I wanted to know what's going on out here. I think a lot of people who are attached to their spirituality continuously want the connection with spirit and always asking why, or always want to talk to spirit and have this interaction with spirit, you know, because you are spirit. So
Hmm.
that's kind of how that happened for me.
Yeah. Wow. So when you say you felt that you were married to the devil, you
Oh,
mean
I
like
was. It was literally.
you mean you mean
And
like literally you're talking about the relationship that you were
I'm
in,
talking
the
about the
marriage.
person. It
The marriage.
was
Okay, I got it.
not
Okay, I just
evil.
clarified.
I definitely believe when you're a light being and you are an angelic earth angel, you would definitely in your lifetime be attached to some devils or some evil entities, you know, because positive energy attracts positive and negative. So you can definitely get caught up in some stuff. So no, literally, you know when some people are just evil to the core. You know, you get to that point where where God is showing you that and you can see that's
Yeah.
what that is. And I definitely that relationship put my relationship with spirituality like a oak tree roots was deep. That's when I really got rooted and held on to spirit, you know, like with my life because of that relationship. So I definitely see that's the reason why I had that relationship, because it was solidifying my relationship with spirit, because I was in such a desperate situation. That's what got me out of it, was my salvation through spirit, just
Hmm.
my connection and learning how to read spirit, and having my own relationship with God was the opposite of what they were telling me to do in church, like endure, put holy water in the washing machine and the clothes and all this crap that was not working, obviously. So I really had to start talking to God because I needed to get out of it.
Yeah.
And that's so it rooted me. It grounded that relationship.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I understand.
yeah.
I understand a lot actually. Yeah. I have an experience that's actually kind of similar to what you described. So I understand like being in a relationship where you really feel like the other party is not is dark, you know, it is
Very
very
dark.
dark. And then navigating that and really trying to make peace with yourself on what to do with that, and how
Exactly.
to honor the commitment that you've made in the face of God, but still, acknowledge that, still battling with the fact that this is not, it's not right. This is dark and it's not really serving me in the way that I think it should. But in retrospect, you realize it did serve you, is what I'm
It's
hearing you say. Mhm.
And then those man-made rules that you learn in church are a lot of times what keeps you in those dark places
Yes.
with those dark entities,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, to endure and just go through the struggle. And then me being directly connected to God, you know, taught me another way. And I definitely believe God has his own language with anyone who has a personal relationship.
Yeah.
And the
Right.
things you hear and you're instructed to do never make sense or never line up with what you were taught.
That's true.
And that was the beautiful thing about spirit is is very freeing once you get to that side, because you know it's just not one, two, three, or come a certain way. It opens the door for any and everything. So you get to a good place of freedom once you have your relationship with spirit and you can hear clear. It's extremely freeing. I mean, like nobody can tell me nothing anymore. Like nothing. Like
Yeah.
it worked for me so well to where, you know, I was talking to my girlfriend the other day and I was telling her about a miracle I had, and she was like, "Oh, you better thank Jesus." I was like, "Girl, don't play with me like that. You know, that's not, I don't do that." And I noticed my friends who still believe in that try to still push that on me. And sometimes I let it slide because of ignorance or it's just a habit. Because I was sold out too now. You know, I was sold out. One of the ones like, look, you know, Jesus was the man. But when I started learning about other religions, every religion has their form of Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Like every religion has this middleman. And so it just led me to believe with every religion has its middleman and different parts of the world that there has to be something higher than that. You know what I mean? Like that's just like the would be an example of the disciples. And then there has to be something even greater than that to bring all of this together collectively.
Hmm.
So just
Yeah.
my search for that kept me going.
Yeah. Interesting.
Mhm.
Interesting. Even to the point where you said, you know, you kind of know you know the truth within yourself. So like when I can think back to certain times where I would say, okay, if I go out literally, this, no, this is literal. If I go outside and there's a blue jay on the light pole, I'm going to leave. And just like, the fact that if there's, and I would make it crazy stuff because I wasn't ready to make a move. So I was like, you know, if there's a blue jay with a red robin next to together, I'm
I love it.
I'm gonna leave. And then I'll go out there and it wouldn't be there. So I'm like, well, that's not time to
Gotta
go.
stay.
You know? So but the fact that I was making up those crazy things, I already knew, right? So I already knew that I just wasn't
Mm-hmm.
ready to make that move, but I knew the truth. So that's
And it
interesting.
had to get to the point where you started to say those things and then they started to appear. It had to get to that point. Yeah.
Yeah. um so okay, so we've talked about a lot of things here, and one of the things that I am interested in learning is how did you get to the place? So you said that you would, when you embarked upon a deeper spiritual or understanding of your spirituality, you would go out and like some random person would read your palm. So you know, in certain religions, that's very taboo to have your palm read or to even entertain like tarot card readers or anything like that. How did you get to the place where you were comfortable with that? And then can you tell us a little bit about what tarot cards are and how they and what they do, how you use them?
Um, I got to the place where I was comfortable with it because when the girl grabbed my palm and read it, I didn't even know her. I was going to this African club in Atlanta, and she had on all white, and she grabbed my hand when I was passing, and everything she said was the truth. I didn't even know her. There was
Mm-hmm.
no denying that something was going on because what she spoke was real.
Mm-hmm.
And it was something very intimate, so there was no way she could know this. And I didn't even know anything about palm reading or anything like that,
Yeah.
or tarot card. Like this, I didn't know anything about that kind of stuff. I mean, like I heard about psychic hotlines, which I called before a long time ago. That was speaking truth to
Miss
me.
Cleo.
It was Miss Cleo, but it was like one of those names through the telephone company. You used to have it through the telephone company, and I just was
Yeah.
always curious because I always wanted to know stuff. I don't know. I just always wanted to know stuff.
Mhm.
So that would happen, and just strangers would walk up to me and just tell me things
Mhm.
about my life all the time. It just was happening, especially after Katrina. It was happening more and more and more like clockwork. So I was just like, wait a minute. I knew something was going on because while in your ordinary life, that stuff just doesn't
Yeah.
happen for no reason exactly. So I met a girl, Fatima. She worked for Dorothea, which is a clairvoyant, and she read tarot cards. But what I've learned about that is we all have these abilities. We're all telepathic. We all can astral travel. This was our original form of being because remember the written language and speaking in English is new. That's new. That's very, very new. So when the Egyptians used to draw pictures and sacred scribes and things, the card readings really come from that. And the traditional tarot deck just started as like a little bridge game. But spiritual people would use pictures because people had pictures before they had words. So they would have to draw pictures and just kind of like interpret different things like that. So spiritual people took this card game, just like they take a deck of playing cards with spades and hearts, they can read that too. And then it would, just like you say, you have a knowing, and spirit speaks to you through whatever the language is. Like Darah can hear, she can directly hear phrases. And I don't know, spirit speaks to me through a knowing. And the fascinating things about the cards is I did a lot of coloring as a kid. I like books and I like pictures, and it's just plain and simple like that. So it was just a way for me to talk to spirit and hear words right away. It would just come in, just plain word form, right away. So what a lot of people don't know about the Bible is a lot of it has a background of Greek mythology. So even with the tarot readings, or any kind of witchery, which is just nature, or like medicine men, medicine women, anything that man can explain becomes taboo. And if you knew about astrology or your natal charts and things like that, you would know about your power. You would have your map to life. So they would make it taboo so you wouldn't have the keys and the essentials of what you needed to break free from bondage.
Mm-hmm.
So after we had left the church and after Katrina and all of that kind of stuff, I just was open to everything. And the truth of the people coming to me with this truth, people I didn't know, they would just tell me things that were true, led me to really believe in it. It's almost like the church, when you have the prophet and the prophetess in the church, it's the same thing. It's just
Yeah.
different words for it. You may want to call it a clairvoyant, you may want to call it a psychic, it's all the same stuff. And we all as people have prophetic dreams and we get signs and images. So we all have some form of it. Just some people just practice and tap into it and get really good at it,
Yeah.
is all it is. So that's kind of how I got started with. That's what fascinated me, because when I went to meet Dorothea, my girlfriend worked for her and she quit working because it was just too real. The things that was happening was too real. And I think one of the clients had a son, and she told the mom to tell the son not to go to a party because he would encounter some death. And that's it. And she didn't, some people have those experiences, but they don't take heed. And
Yeah.
her son was killed. So, and then that's when she quit.
Mm.
And when she told me that story, I was like, I want to meet her. I want to meet this woman who I hear knows all of these things. And so when I set up an appointment and went to her house, which was extremely magical for me because I could see firsthand what was going on. So I'm asking all these questions, and then and she's flipping all these cards and laying all this stuff on this. They're flying and flipping around, very magical like. And she's telling me, I don't even know this woman, but she's telling me all about my life and things that have happened. And so I'm just like, I'm feeling it because it's true. So then I asked her about this business venture with these Asians. She's flipping all these cards and all these Asians and magical knives and stuff come out. So I'm just like, damn, this is like, it got me more and more and more intrigued. So after that experience, I researched it and went and got my own deck and just started playing around with it. And I couldn't read the tarot because tarot is something that's revealed to you once you get to a certain level. So it took me many years to really learn it and for it to really speak to me. So I just grabbed some oracle cards because it's just regular words. And when you grab some stuff, you get butterflies, flowers. It's just words and pictures. And when you tap into spirit, like when you're praying or meditating and you just start flipping these cards, you know, God just speaks to you. It's just a story or information that you need to know. Just plain in there instead of going through that whole struggle of what is God trying to tell me? What should I do? Which way should I go? Da, 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 da. You can just open up these cards and when you're pure, your intention is pure, then spirit will just reveal it to you because you're in this vulnerable state and you want to know it and spirit wants you to know. And then the beautiful thing about it is you can share it with other people so they can see that it's real and they can tap into their own spirit as well. So I think religion just has a lot of taboos. I mean, they go from anywhere from you can't wear certain color fingernail polish to a certain, length skirt to, all kind of rules and restrictions and things like that. So I just adopted the theory of I don't worry about anything that doesn't finance me, feed me, or give me any type of support. I don't worry about those things because that's not going to affect my life. So as a child, by me not having a close relationship with my mom and my sisters were close, so I kind of was stuck out just by myself, just out here because it was my mom and her husband and then my two sisters. So I was like the fifth one. So that was my friend. That's who I talked to. That's who I went to. That's who I called on whenever I needed from all the way from the beginning because probably because of growing up in church. So it was just something I developed early as a child, as early as 5 years old. And even though they told the story of it was going to be the end of the world and we were going to burn in hell and things, I just didn't believe that. I just, for some reason, I just didn't really feel that in my spirit. I felt like something different was going to go on. And just like now, it's just the end of the world as we know it. It's just evolution. That's all it is. It's just, so I definitely believe in it too, because facts play a big part in me being navigated through spirituality. That's why I'm definitely into metaphysics because it just can't be faith by itself. I definitely appreciate the history and facts and the knowledge and things that come with it too as well.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. Wow. Do you, Nalo and Lady Darah, do you have, is your experience similar or do you use tarot cards or, what is your comfort level with it and how do you feel about, you know, that part of your spirituality if you practice that?
Nilo, you want to go first?
I mean, that's fine. I am not anywhere near as intense with this as my sister. When I saw her apartment, I thought I was in a retail store. There were so many deck of cards and crystals and stones and all of that. I definitely believe in it. I practice it just for my personal self. I don't do readings and things like that she does. I definitely practice it, not as often as these two, but I definitely practice. So, and I too have gone to see Dorothea. It wasn't as magical as her experience. It was interesting. We'll say that.
That's funny.
So I think that I have kind of like I believe in it and I practice it, but it's not a ritual per se. I'm not gonna read cards every day or something like that. But I do believe
you're comfortable and you believe in it. Okay. And Darah?
For me, I'm in the middle.
Okay.
I do, and see, here's the thing. I don't know if Kisha may have said it already, but the tarot is mainly your energy. So it's not something outside of you. It is you. So when I use it to practice my intuition, because it tells me if I'm on point, it's going to align or resonate with what you already know. Okay. You know, like she said, it's a knowing. That's just kind of like your tangible proof that, okay, wow, I'm on point. Okay. That's what I do. I practice my intuition with mine. And then I make like major life decisions. So if I can't like feel it in here to move forward, then I do go to the tarot.
Okay, that makes sense. So if you're dark, it can be dark.
Oh, definitely.
Oh,
yeah.
But if you're light, it's light.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got it.
And one thing with that, you're gonna know that because you're gonna feel in your spirit if it's light or dark. Even if the person reading for you is light or dark, spirit source will let you know.
Yeah. Just like the woman that came to you in church and said, God told me to tell you. Yeah, it's the same thing. And anybody can turn cards over and experience this for themselves. Exactly. Because if God wants to speak, God is going to speak. Point blank. That's what it's going to be. So yeah, anybody can tell you something that could be dark even without even using any cards. You know what I'm saying? So that's really just a tool, like a pendulum, or like if anybody walks up to you on the street, gives you a message from God. That's still a form of, like you said, a vehicle, a tool to get the message to you. Yeah. So it just depends on what you're attracted to. You know, how do you want to get your information from spirit? I can get it through songs that I listen to, or just through nature, because I play with. I'm in constant commune with spirit all the time. So cards aren't the only thing. You know, I pull that out a lot of times when things get real sticky and thick. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, so it's a
Blue Jay moment.
Yeah, it's a very
Blue Jay, Red Robin type moment. You pull a card, you pull those cards out. Yes. Got it. Okay, that makes sense. You know, because I think for me, like the first clue I had, but there was more than what I understood there to be. This was like many years ago. I was in New Orleans, and I was with a friend of mine, and we were in the French Quarter, and there was she said, I want to get my palm read, you know, and I said, okay, well, you go ahead. I'll I'll sit back here. And she said, well, just sit next to me. So I said, okay, I'll sit with you, but I'm good. I don't need to have my palm read. So I'm sitting there with her, and so the lady is reading her palm, and there was a gentleman next to her, and he said, I'll read your palm. I said, no, I'm fine. You know, and he said, oh, well, you have, so he just started reading anyway. And he says, well, you have a lot of, you're a water sign, and you were born in whatever month he said. And so she stopped what she was doing. I guess she was like, let me stop all this shenanigans, because you don't know what he's doing. So she's like, no. She's a fire sign. No, she was born in July. No, she was born July 28th. I was like, whoa. So she when she finished up with my friend, she said, I'll read your palm, I'll do it for free, I'll just, after I'm done with her, I'll read. And I said, okay, I'm sure, let's see what you have to say. So the interesting thing was, so I was married at the time, to someone different than who I'm married to today. And he was there, and she was saying these things about my husband, but like in future tense. and the way she was describing him, it wasn't making any sense. So I was like, that's not accurate. I was, and she said, but I see you getting married. She described when I was going to get married and all of these things. And then but she was very accurate about my past. So that was really weird to me. So I'm like, well, how is it she's seeing this wedding and I'm already married to this person? And how is she describing this other person, but that is nothing like this person over here, So, but that was like my first, like, there's something else. And then I had an experience where once I started really, I was in church. I was asking all the questions. I was frustrating all the people, and and I decided. I said, let me just take a step back and explore a little bit on my own and figure out some things. And so as I started reading and like experiences just started happening with me. I started meditating, and when I was meditating, I would always have this light show up, and I didn't understand what it was. I just knew that it was nice. It was nice, as a nice, byproduct of meditation. I didn't, know what it was. So eventually, I read a book about past life regression, and I found someone to do a reading for me. I went to a past life regression therapy session, and when we were talking, because at this point, I really don't know much of anything outside of what I knew in formal religion. So I didn't like meditate. All of that was new to me. So when she gave me exercises to do prior to my coming, and she said, well, did you do the exercises? Did you follow the visual meditation? And I said, yeah, I did. But every time, I did it, it was working. But that light was in the way. Like it was hard to focus with the light. And she she sat straight up and she said, you see a light? And I said, yeah, I see. Every time I meditate, like the light is right there, like light. And she said, do you have the light on in the room? Like, are you sure? And I said, yeah, no, I'm sure it's a light. Like it shows up. And she's like, okay, let's just go on with it. So we go through the whole process. And for the very first time, the light changed colors while we were, she was calling upon my higher self, and it turned like a deep indigo color. And I was like, this is unique. This is interesting. We'll just go with it. So I didn't understand what it was. And then afterward, we talked about it. And then I did my own research because I'm like, what was that? Why did it change color? And then I realized it was my higher self. It was my it was my third eye. So I was like, wow, this is real, because I didn't know. And what I liked about it is that I didn't know that the third eye was associated, that like that chakra was associated. I didn't know anything about chakras or any of that, but I didn't know that color was associated with that. So when it happened at the time that she called upon it, like when she called upon my higher self, it turned colors. And I was like, okay, this is absolutely real. Like this is not something that I've made up or imagined in a book, So yeah, but like the tarot cards, I never had a reading with the tarot. Oh, the other thing, I did I started looking into numerology, and I just started performing. Like I spent the whole day performing all the calculations. I was like, okay, I can calculate my life, and I started. But it was so intriguing, because the things that I read, once I calculated my life path number, I'm like, this is so spot on. So it's like, okay, I'm going to calculate my husband, my kids. I'm going to calculate my mom. So I did, and it was just really, really interesting how much I learned about myself and all of the people around me just by knowing these numbers. Like that is amazing. Like how does that work? Like how does a number know some, like I don't know, that was just really interesting to me. So basically said all that to say I can understand what you mean about tarot being a vessel, basically, right? Like to translate what you know from inside, or to communicate. So yeah, okay.